Hey, welcome back everyone to another devlog. So last week I discussed how I was working on some new collision stuff. I was experimenting with some new collision detection methods for the tiles. The idea that I had was to merge all the tiles that the player is standing on. If you look at the player right now, you can see this blue rectangle beneath him. So I pretty much just check the tiles that the player is standing on and then merge them into a rectangle. And then I perform the separated axis theorem on that. So I'll give you guys a quick explanation of the separated axis theorem. You can see two colliders here, the red rectangle around the player and the red rectangle just here floating in the air I made as an example. Then you see these green lines coming from both the player and the other rectangle, and then this red one here and this blue one here. So what this green line represents is kind of like the shadow of the player, I guess you could say. That's not a mathematical term. It's the projection of the x-axis on the normal. But I'll just keep saying shadow because that's a lot easier to understand and to visualize. So you can see these two shadows and you can see there is a gap between them. They are not touching. So that means that they are not colliding. If you move the player closer, you can see the shadow becomes smaller. And if we actually move the player inwards, then you can see that they actually overlap. So there is an overlap on the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis. But you can see that a new axis came here on the side, which is the y-axis. So in order to detect a collision, there has to be no gap between any of the axes of the two objects. So we move again and you can see the gap is becoming smaller. So if we actually move it all the way down, then you can see the player can't enter because the algorithm detects a collision because there are no gaps between any of the shadows. And how the algorithm knows how to resolve the collision, so how to know it has to move the player upwards instead of moving it to the left of the rectangle, is you look at the minimum penetration factor, which is pretty much just which one is the smallest gap. So you can see at the top that the red part of the player is really far into the blue part of the other rectangle. But if you look here, you can see the red part is just in there a very tiny bit. So we know we have to resolve on this axis, and we know we have to resolve the amount that the red part is in the blue part. So just like 2 pixels or something. And yeah, that's pretty much how the algorithm works. And the cool thing is it works on any convex shape. So if we move the player here to the slope, you can see it also works on the slope. And you can see that there's an additional axis here. It's kind of hard to see because it goes into the ground, but there's an additional axis here for the sloped part of the square. So that's another axis to test the collision on. I really like this algorithm because I'm not that good at math and I really need a visual representation of the math in order to understand it correctly. And this is really visual. You can just see the actual overlap, you can see the shadows, and really helps me to figure out what's going on behind the scenes. And yeah, it's a really cool algorithm. So if you want to read a more technical implementation of this algorithm, I'll link down the link that I used as a reference for my implementation. So you can see I worked out some issues that I had. The actual tiles collider is now the proper size. So if we jump on here, you can see it properly sizes the collider. And it works pretty well. I rerouted all the wall jump, collision detection and stuff like that. So that all works as well now. So you can wall jump and you can also do the vault. I all had to rewire that to the new collision detection system. And if we go here, you can also see that the line detection is working again. So we can jump here, here, and yeah, the line is completed. It's kind of hard to see with all the debug info, but it's working. So now I'm at the point where I can get the most benefit out of this collision detection method, because yeah, testing against squares, it's easy, right? But the thing was, I was having a lot of trouble with slopes, and it really just feels like a hack if you have to make slopes with tile collision in the normal way, where you just test one tile against another. So you can see whenever the player collides with a slope, I check the entire slope, I check up and down to see the entirety of the slope. Before this I was just testing against a single tile square. I was just making a small little rectangle just where the player was standing. But then you get some issues where the player is colliding against the inner tiles and stuff like that. So I think this was the best solution, just to find the entire slope. That way you get rid of a lot of problem with tiles that are next to each other, and then you might get stuck inside the little gap between those tiles. So yeah, I decided just to merge all of them, and you can see it works pretty well. You still don't stick to the slope. I haven't implemented that yet, so it looks kind of weird when you're moving down. Ideally in retro type games you want to stick to the slope when you're moving down. So yeah, I still have to implement that. But there's still one more problem that I'm facing. If you walk to the top of the slope, you can see, yeah, you can't progress any further because you collide against the tile right next to the slope. And that's a problem that I had with the slopes earlier, and yeah, I didn't came across to fixing this yet. So the solution that I'm thinking of is, when I'm making the collider for the non-slope tile, so the really long one here, I think I should just check if the tile next to it is solid or not. And if it is solid, then we can just ignore the whole left side of this rectangle. We can just worry about colliding with the y-axis, with the top part. I'm a little bit bummed out because I was thinking this new collision detection method would get rid of all the ugly tile collision. It really felt like there were a lot of edge cases that you had to account for, but as it turns out, all these edge cases also apply to this new collision detection system. So I'm not yet sure if this is the system I want to use, or if I want to go back to my old collision detection system and refine that a bit with the new knowledge that I gained. But yeah, it isn't the holy grail as I thought it would be. It's not normally very fun to work on this. I don't like low level stuff. I just want things like collision to work. I don't want to bother with it. I wish it would just work. I didn't have to worry about it, but somehow I was having fun with this. So yeah, I kept up with it for an entire week, and yeah, it's going pretty well, and I think I will continue to work on it. And I might even still try some other collision detection ideas that I have. So one other thing that I did was experiment with some more composing, making some music again. I didn't put in that much time this week because I was mainly working on the collision detection stuff, but I managed to make one song that I was okay with. It wasn't the sound I was looking for. I was actually trying to make music for the level in the game, but yeah, it just didn't get the vibe that I was going for, but it's still an okay song nonetheless, I think. So one other headache I'm dealing with is I have to do my tax, and I hate doing taxes. I really don't like running a company, I just like making games. I don't want to bother with all the taxes stuff. And it's just so complicated, in the Netherlands at least. I wish I could just fill in the money I earned and the money I spend and then it's done, but there's so many small little things you have to fill in, and yeah, it's just not fun at all. So I think I'm gonna find a accountant for it this time. It's kinda expensive, it's like 300 euros or something, which is a lot for me. I don't make a lot of money, but yeah, I think 300 euros is worth saving all the stress that it causes me. I really don't have any stress at all. I have a really carefree life, but doing tax is just so much stress, biggest stress of the year. So yeah, sorry, this is not interesting at all, but I guess I needed to blow off some steam. So thanks for watching this kind of boring episode, but I still wanted to give you guys something to see, so yeah, I hope you can still enjoy it nonetheless, and I'll see you guys next week. I will probably keep working on the collision stuff. I should do it properly this time, so yeah, be patient. Thanks for watching, and see you guys again next week.